Before we get started, I want to talk about something that's kind of been sticking in my craw. This is probably not going to come as a surprise to most people, but I saw a clip of, I think it was Get Up, the ESPN show, and Ryan Clark, who says a lot of very, very, very stupid things. Former NFL player, one of the dirtiest players in the history of the National Football League, all around not the best guy, Ryan Clark. He kind of belittled and disrespected Peter Schrager, who is one of the most respected and highly thought of journalists across the NFL, one of the best reporters, one of the smartest guys in the business, and kind of talked about the fact that he's not a player, so he wouldn't understand. And Ryan tried to come up with his theory as to why he was saying it and had his explanation, and some people understood it and some people didn't. But it's a part to me of a bigger picture in sports media that's really annoying. It is the idea that just because somebody didn't play the game at a professional level or even a college level or whatever you may say means that they are no longer qualified to talk about it, whether that be a sport, whether that be whatever it is. If you didn't do something professionally or if you didn't play at a certain level, then you're not really qualified to talk about it, especially if there are people who did play in the NFL around you or on the set or a part of the conversation as well. That sort of thing is really frustrating to me and to a lot of people in sports media who do care about maybe the journalistic side of things, or maybe about a different perspective, or have different connections, conversations, a different view on things. Just because someone didn't play sports professionally doesn't mean they are not qualified to talk about it. There are a lot of really, really smart people who played at a very low level but have gone on to be really successful in sports media. There's people who haven't played football at all, but because you learn the game, you talk to people and you figure out ways to understand the game, and you talk to people who have played the game, you can provide good analysis, good insight, good perspective to a football conversation or a sports conversation as a whole. And one of the trends in sports media lately has been athlete, 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 ex-athlete, ex-athlete, ex-athlete. These people have credibility. And more we're seeing that that's not always true. Just because they played the game doesn't mean that they can always adequately explain the game, explain what might be going through somebody's mind, explain a certain move, provide insight, necessarily interpret the data the way it's supposed to be interpreted, explain the data, all that sort of stuff. So it's really frustrating, especially for someone like me who wants to have a career in sports media and has a career in sports media, but oftentimes people will think, oh, well, this guy didn't do anything, he hasn't accomplished anything, he's not qualified to speak on it. And that's not to say that the people who did play aren't qualified to speak on it. But I know people that played in the NFL who I don't trust their analysis of the National Football League. You know what I mean? And they're in this business as well. And so it's a slippery slope. It's a trend in sports media. And hopefully people like Pablo Torre and the journalism that he brings and the integrity that he brings, and stars in the business like Peter Schrager can bring a little bit more credibility to those of us who didn't play the game. And networks and bosses and directors can all look around and say, you know what, we don't always have to have a former player on to provide the insight. It's just something that kind of bothers me a little bit, and I wanted to get that out of the way before we get started. All right, let's get started. Hi, hello, and welcome in to episode number 149 of the Ball Don't Lie podcast. My name is Austin Elmore. Thank you for being here. Thank you for spending some of your Friday night / Saturday morning, maybe Sunday, with me as we get set to kick off the NFL season. As I'm recording this, the Chiefs and Chargers are about 15 minutes away from kickoff in Sao Paulo, Brazil. So I don't know what happened in that game, but I am going to get you set quickly over the next 15 minutes because I want to go watch that game on the Bengals and the Browns. Let's start. Last episode, I gave you my season predictions. I said the Bengals would go 10-7. I said they would make the playoffs. I said they would win a playoff game, but I had them losing to Buffalo in the second round. Here's how I see the Bengals season playing out. I have them winning at Cleveland in week 1. Then I have them losing at home against Jacksonville. and on the road against Minnesota. So the conversation around the Bengals is once again a slow start. The reason I have them losing those games is because I still don't feel like the defense is fully ready to go yet. And I think they're going to need a little bit of time to get up to speed. And I think the offense might stumble in a game at Minnesota or potentially not be able to keep up with the offense that I think is going to be really good this year in Jacksonville. And because of that, the Bengals come out of the gates slow again. But I think they recover with a win at Denver on Monday Night Football, and that could be a huge jumpstart for this team. I think they come back home, though, and lose to the Detroit Lions, specifically the smash-mouth football and style of play of the Lions. Even though Detroit is missing their coordinators from a year ago, Dan Campbell and the mentality that he has instilled in the Lions, I don't think that's going to change. I think the Bengals are still kind of figuring out their footing and struggling defensively. Detroit finds a way to win that game. And then I have the Bengals getting hot going into the bye week, winning games at Green Bay and then 3 straight games at home prior to the bye. A Pittsburgh game on a Thursday night, here against the Jets and here against the Bears at 1 p.m. That has the Bengals in pretty good shape at the bye at 5 and, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 3. If that's not, is that correct? 6 and 3 looking at my screen? Yeah. 6 and 3 going into the bye. I think everybody would sign up for that. The Bengals have certainly been worse at the bye before. Coming out of the bye, I have them losing at Pittsburgh, always a tough place to play, and I have them losing at home to the New England Patriots. I'm very high on the Patriots. You heard me say in the last episode I'm picking them to go to the playoffs. I think the Patriots upset the Bengals in Cincinnati for the second year in a row. That puts the Bengals at 6 and 5 going into the toughest stretch of the season. At Baltimore, Thanksgiving night, Thursday night football, I think the Bengals exercise some demons and they win that game at Baltimore, putting them at 7 and 5. But I think they lose the next 2. At Buffalo the following week in a hangover game and back at home against Baltimore a week after that. So that has the Bengals going from 7 and 5 to 7 and 7 with 3 games left on the schedule, which is at Miami, home against Arizona, and home against the Cleveland Browns. I think the Bengals sweep those 3, go 10 and 7, and sneak into the playoffs, as I said earlier, on that 6th seed, maybe that 7th seed, whatever it might be. Cincinnati makes the playoffs and wins a playoff game. I do think they are a good enough team to do so, but I think there are prerequisites that have to be done in order for the Bengals to get to where they want to go. So I was thinking about this. They've spent a ton of money on their offense. They've spent a ton of money on Joe and Jamar and T and all those people, and I get it, and they should, and it's great. But the story of the 2025 Bengals has to be that they can run the football. Not that they become a run-first team, not that they make Chase Brown a bell cow and runs 30, 35 times a game. It's that they can run the football. They can stay ahead of the change. They can depend on Chase Brown to get a 3rd and 1 or a 4th and 1. The offensive line is not a complete liability in the run game. Keep in mind, Frank Pollock was fired, and he was the run game coordinator. Dan Pitcher has taken that over as the offensive coordinator, and there is a shift towards how can we make Chase Brown the guy, which has led to me having one of my Bengals hot takes. Are you ready for this? Get your fire extinguisher ready. I don't think it's that hot, but my hot take is that Chase Brown, the Bengals running back, has more rushing yards in 2025 than T. Higgins has receiving yards. If you look back to last year, T had 911 receiving yards in 12 games. T has played in 12 games each of the last 2 years. I think Chase Brown becomes a huge part of this offense, which means they throw it a little bit less, which means Higgins gets a few less catches and a few less yards, and Chase Brown exceeds that number in receiving yards that Higgins would have in rushing yards for Chase Brown. That's my hot take. And again, the Bengals don't need a run-first, smash-mouth mentality. They need a run game that is dependable. They're never going to be a run-first team as long as Joe and Jamar and T are here, and they shouldn't be. But do they have a run game where when you need to kill some clock, you can run it down somebody's throat, take 3 or 4 minutes off the clock, and win the game? Do you have a run game that in short yardage can keep you ahead of the chains, can convert a 3rd down, can keep a drive alive, and make a defense respect it? And here's the other thing. The Bengals have to be better at running the football to help their defense. Part of the reason why the defense struggled as much as it did is because they were on the field a lot. The Bengals scored quickly with explosive plays. They moved the ball really fast. The clock didn't usually have a lot of time coming off of it, and the Bengals defense was out there a lot. They need to play complementary football where what the offense is doing helps the defense, and the defense needs to get more 3-and-outs to get the ball back to the offense. This isn't rocket science. It's not new for any football fans, but you have to think about it this way. I put a little bit of this on Joe Burrow. I put a little bit of this on Zach Taylor. I understand the strengths of the team and the money that's invested in it, but at the same time, look around at the defense and say, okay, these guys are struggling. They need help. Can we drain the clock a little bit? Can we give them one less possession to the opponent each game where our defense doesn't have to be out there and get a stop? And can we drain the clock a little bit and control the tempo of the game, control the line of scrimmage, and have a little bit of that nasty that we talk about with teams like the Detroit Lions, for example? That's what I want. Philadelphia, to an extent as well. The Bengals' run game has to be dependable. It doesn't have to be the feature. It doesn't have to be the most important thing, but they have to be able to help the defense out, shorten the games a little bit, keep them off the field. And I think that's imperative in the early start of the season. Now, I have them going 10-7. I wouldn't be surprised if they won 12 or 13 games because I do believe they have the talent to do that. But this whole offseason has been about starting fast for Cincinnati. They have to start fast. Well, I think the offense is ahead of the defense right now. And there's a lot of confidence coming out of Paycor Stadium for the Bengals offense. And it's going to be up to the offense to carry the defense while they figure some things out under a new coordinator with some new players and getting their legs under them in the regular season. So early on, the offense might have to carry this team until the defense gets it figured out. I gave you the season prediction. I went game by game. Let's kind of focus more towards the Bengals and Browns coming up on Sunday in Cleveland. Let's do the uniform report. The Bengals are going to be wearing their orange helmets, white jerseys, white pants, black socks, their typical road uniform. Cleveland, meanwhile, will go with their orange helmets, brown jerseys, and they're going to be wearing them orange breeches with their brown jerseys, which I think is one of the Browns' best looks. Cleveland has also returned to the helmet logo painted at midfield at Huntington Bank Field or Park or Stadium or whatever it is that they play in. No longer painting the elf in the middle of the field. They're going back to that traditional Browns helmet that we have seen for so many years in the past. So, injury report, the Bengals are totally clean. This is one of the first times they've been a completely clean, injury-free report coming into a game in quite some time. Now, B.J. Hill didn't practice once this week. That was part of a veteran rest day for B.J. And then it was interesting. Browns had a relatively normal injury report with not a lot of surprises on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, Myles Garrett popped up with a hip injury, and he did not practice. After practice and after the report came out, Cameron Wolfe of NFL Network reported that Myles Garrett's fine. He's expected to practice Friday. He's going to play on Sunday. Well, what happened? Myles practiced on Friday. He was off the injured report, and he is going to play on Sunday. I was kind of hoping that, Myles would take a little bit of time to make sure his body gets right, but instead he will play on Sunday against the Bengals, and that's a huge part. That your entire game plan is built around don't let Myles Garrett beat me. And I thought it was interesting. There's been some trash talk already this week. These two teams do not like each other. I don't think these two head coaches like each other very much, Kevin Stefanski and Zach Taylor. And Grant Delpit, a former LSU guy, has been talking a little bit of smack. Obviously knows Joe and Jamar, and Denzel Ward is on that team, who was classmates and friends with Joe Burrow when they were at Ohio State. Grant Delpit said it's going to be a tough day for the Bengals offensive line. Said that to the media. And Jamar Chase was asked about maybe celebrating in the end zone, jumping in the dog pound like Chad Johnson did years ago. And Chad's like, and Jamar's like, I'm not going to step on, I'm not going to jump in that dog pound. I heard they stab people. So we've got some weird kind of trash talk going back and forth between these two teams. But let's see, who are some players that I want to focus on in this game that I think are going to be imperative? Obviously, Joe, Jamar, T, Myles Garrett, those type of guys. Start with that Browns defensive line. Mason Graham, the rookie out of Michigan, can cause havoc. The Bengals still have question marks on the interior of their offensive line. They're starting a rookie in Dylan Fairchild, and then a newcomer, Lucas Patrick, at right guard. The Bengals typically don't go on a rotation with the offensive line. Dalton Reisner perhaps could get some play. I don't know that he will. But either way, that's going to be imperative because Myles Garrett moves around all over the place. Mason Graham can be an issue and a thorn in the side of the Bengals, especially if they try to get that run game going. Let's also look at the Bengals offense. Mike Gesicki, a guy that we haven't talked about a lot. He missed some time with injury during training camp. The Browns historically are a difficult matchup for the Bengals. And part of it is because of the good play that they have in their secondary, what Denzel Ward can do, and obviously their ability to rush the passer. Mike Gesicki has made some really big plays for this Bengals team last year and in the past. And so I would like to see him get involved and create some matchup problems for that Browns defense because it's not going to be just as easy as get the ball to Joe and to Jamar and T. The Browns are going to do everything they can to take that away. Can the Bengals establish the run, and can they make Mike Gesicki a threat while Cleveland tries to take away some of those big guys, and can the Bengals capitalize on that? Another guy I'm curious about, Charlie Jones. Remember him? The guy they call Chuck Sizzle? Charlie Jones last year in Cleveland took a kickoff return to the house against the Cleveland Browns. He's their most experienced and best return man. He had a really strong camp. Joe Burrow trusts him. I imagine we'll see him on the field as a wide receiver. And I wonder if Charlie Jones will have an impact as a kick returner or punt returner or whatever it might be in this game against Cleveland. He's a guy to watch out for as well. And for Cleveland, the other guy you always got to look out for, Denzel Ward. This dude has been a thorn in the side of the Bengals ever since he's been in Cleveland. He has a 100-yard pick six on Joe Burrow on a pass intended for Jamar Chase. So and the familiarity of the offense, of the scheme, Jim Schwartz, the Browns defensive coordinator, has been there the whole time. Zach Taylor basically has been the head coach. And since Joe and Jamar have been in the league, these two teams are very familiar with one another. They know each other really well. Denzel Ward especially knows Joe and Jamar. And I think that's going to be a critical battle in this game that could end up playing a role in who wins it or loses it. The Bengals have struggled in Cleveland, by the way. They are 4-6 in their last 10 games in Cleveland. If I'm not mistaken, they've only covered the spread in those 10 games like once or twice, which is kind of hard to believe, but it's true. So the Bengals have struggled in Cleveland. As of now, 5.5 points is the spread. I think I feel comfortable with the Bengals winning 7 to 10 points. I don't know that they're going to win by more than that. Maybe it ends up being a field goal game or maybe like a 24-20 like we saw with Dallas and Philly. One thing I've learned over the years is that week one lines in the NFL mean nothing. I do expect the Bengals, though, to win this game by at least 7 points. I'm going to say Cincinnati wins week one 30-23 in Cleveland, and Cincinnati starts 1-0. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Ball Don't Lie podcast. I'm thinking about doing an Ask Auty after the game Sunday, going into the first episode of the week on Wednesday. Stay tuned for that. We'll obviously talk about the rest of the NFL, what happened, including on Monday Night Football, what happens tonight as I'm recording this in Sao Paulo with the Chiefs and the Chargers. So be on the lookout for that. Please be sure to follow me on anything and everything at Auty Elmore, AUTYELMORE. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Ball Don't Lie podcast. We'll talk to you again next week. And as always, have fun, be safe, go Bucks.